Joy and I just got back from Rome, and yes, it was an exciting time to be in Rome. The death of one pope, the conclave, and then the election of another pope. All of that is exciting. It is interesting to actually visit the basilica, particularly the Sistine Chapel, where the conclave takes place. It's something that in Western culture you can't describe. The idea that something would take 100 or 200 years to build is just not something that we think about. I mean, we tear down stadiums that are old so we can build new ones. And so it's not a concept that is easy for us as Americans to understand. However, in Rome is one of the things that is like on the bucket list of my life to see, and that was the Colosseum, because it is the place that a story took place, a legend, a story took place that I've told probably for the last 20 or 30 years as a pastor. And I'm going to tell you that story again today because it took place in the great Colosseum of Rome. And as I traveled across the countryside of Italy, it became more evident to me of how and why this would occur. The basis of this is the idea of sacrifice. And as human beings, sacrifice is not something that we naturally want to do, because it is intentionally choosing to suffer so that we can have something else. But sacrifice was established by God all the way back in the Old Testament. It is an act of atonement when we make sacrifice. It is so many things that we really don't understand, or I don't understand at times, but atonement is one of those things. Forgiveness is one of those things. Reconciliation is one of those things. But there is a power that sacrifice has that I don't completely understand. I just know that it's a truth that works in my life and was established by God to work in all of our lives. But we've not really been taught the power of sacrifice. And so it is not something that we do easily, or it's not something that we do readily. But God intended for sacrifice to be a part of our lives, not just once in a while, not just for our sins, but literally for everything in our life. And we spend so much of our time looking or seeking, as we say, the will of God, when in reality, the will of God is something that we become. And it takes sacrifice in order for us to become the will of God. We seek the will of God or look for the will of God as if it is something that He would hide from us. And it's not. It's something or someone that we become. It's there. But there are principles and there are truths that are a part of becoming the will of God. And one of those truths is the truth about sacrifice. It has to be a part of our lives. And that's really where my story and the Roman Colosseum begins, is about a little monk by the name of Telemachus, who makes an incredible sacrifice, and in turn, what happens as a result of that sacrifice. When standing and looking at the Roman Colosseum, it's almost impossible to imagine that 1600, 1700 years ago, they were capable of building this thing without cranes or without tractors or earth movers or all of those kind of things that make this work so much easier today. But they did. And it's a Colosseum that has a history that is not really good. The type of entertainment that took place there was the most cruel and brutal, just for the entertainment of the people and the Caesar or whomever was in charge at a particular time. And people gave their life in some of the most barbaric and cruel ways in order to just entertain the people. And the Caesar would decide at the strategic time, at this very moment, that whether or not somebody lived or whether or not they died. And this is where this story takes place. And I say legend because I can't footnote it, I can't document its origin, but it's been told and retold for, I guess, hundreds of years, and I tell it and retell it. But it was in traveling across the northern part of Italy on the train that I could see this happening. And I stayed in a hotel in northern Italy in a place called Siena that was built, the city was built in the 11th century. And the hotel was probably 1,000 years old. Now, obviously, it had been remodeled hundreds, maybe not hundreds of times, but many times. But in looking at this part of Italy, I could just see this. There were rolling hills, there were mountainsides, there were vineyards, there were monasteries, there were abbeys, and the most incredible churches that literally I've ever seen in my life. Some of them took 200 years to build. That isn't something that, think about a building committee being a part of something that took 200 years. But the story begins in northern Italy, and this monk by the name of Telemachus was there in this monastery, and I sort of see him as this little short, heavy, bald-headed monk with one of those bowl-cut haircuts that sort of puttered around in this monastery, and I just see him there. But every morning he would get up and pray early, as they do, and one morning there was a voice or just something that came to him and said, "Telemachus, go to Rome." And Telemachus just sort of pushed it off, and he prayed again the next day, and he just sort of had a sense or a feeling that Telemachus, go to Rome. And this happened for about a month. He had this feeling that he was to go to Rome. And so one day he decided he would share this feeling, this sort of internal voice with the Monsignor there at the monastery. And he said, "Monsignor, I have this feeling, I have this voice that comes to me inside and says, go to Rome. And I'm not made for Rome." And the Monsignor says, "Telemachus, when you return to your prayers tomorrow, just say to God, I will become what it is that you want me to become." And so Telemachus the next day prays to God and says, "I will become this. I will make this move in my life." And so sure enough, Telemachus goes to Rome. He leaves this small monastery in the northern mountains and hills of Italy and goes to Rome. And Rome is everything he fears. It's huge. It's thousands of people, and it is yet that way today. And much of Rome, even yet today, is just thousands of years old. And when Telemachus gets there, there are people, there are markets, there are just everything, and there are people that speak languages he doesn't understand. And one day he gets caught up in this crowd that is going to the great Roman Colosseum. And he finds himself, I don't know, maybe up in the gallery there, and he's watching this, and all of a sudden from either end of this Colosseum, that it's huge. It's just almost incomprehensible to think that this is 1600, 1700 years old. And he sees these two huge, what we call gladiators, come out, and they begin to duel. They begin to fight with these swords, with these shields, and he can tell they're trying to kill each other. And they do. They cut each other, and they land these blows. Telemachus is just like stunned by this. He can't believe these people are doing this, and the crowd is just going wild around him. They're chanting, they're hollering and screaming, and he turns to the people around him and he says, stop this. And nobody listens to the little monk. And so the little monk goes to the edge of the arena, and when you look at this, you can see this. He goes to the edge of the arena and says to this whole section, stop this in the name of God, forbear. Stop this. And nobody listens to the little monk. And so he climbs down over the retaining wall that's about 10 feet there. And you can see it. There are portions of it that still exist. And the story goes that Telemachus ran out to the gladiators and says to them, stop this. He sort of pulls on them and says, stop this. And now the crowd is amused by Telemachus. He's funny to them. And he keeps pulling and says, stop this, in the name of God, stop this. And he grabs the arm of one of the big gladiators and he shrugs him off. And as he does, he sort of tumbles in the sand. And the other gladiator pierces his sword into his chest. And Telemachus just lays there. And he's mumbling the phrase, "In the name of God, forbear." As Telemachus lies there, he continues to mumble the phrase, "In the name of God, forbear." The crowd begins to grow quiet now. And the two huge gladiators are now just watching the little monk, and there is now a circle of blood around him. But he's still mumbling the phrase, "In the name of God, forbear." The crowd begins to slip away in reflection and humiliation of what they've become as people. But he's still mumbling, "In the name of God, forbear." The two huge gladiators watch the little monk as he dies. And the legend says that was the end of the gladiator fights in the Roman Colosseum. We become the will of God by sacrifice, by giving up something for a higher cause.